independence in the 1930s by Jawaharlal Nehru, as well as a bunch of freedom fighters. Over the years, AJL, Associated Journals, had taken a loan of 90 crore rupees, allegedly from shell companies. Now, there was another Section 25 not-for-profit company called Young India Limited, in which Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi had controlling stake. They had 76% between the two of them. The ED has said in its prosecution complaint that the Congress assigned the debt of 90 crores that AJL owed to the Congress party and its various associate entities to Young India, by Young India paying 50 lakh rupees to AJL. The ED probe reveals that Young India took over AJL and all its associated assets for just 50 lakh rupees, while AJL itself was sitting on properties worth crores, perhaps even running into thousands of crores. The Enforcement Directorate claims that the Congress wrote off the entire 89.5 crores out of the 90 crores that AJL owed the Congress party and its various associate entities. 89.5 crores were written off with the acquisition of AJL and its residual assets by Young India Limited. The allegation is that Young India took over the entire assets of the defunct print media outlet in a malicious manner and profited from assets worth over 2,000 crores. Well, it's not just the AJL case that's come to the fore today, but it's also Priyanka Gandhi's husband, Robert Vadra, who is under the scanner of the Enforcement Directorate. He was quizzed today for over 5 hours. He was allowed to leave only after being summoned again tomorrow. Now, the case that the ED is investigating pertains to a land deal. This goes all the way back to February of 2008. Robert Vadra's firm, Skylight Hospitality Private Limited, bought a piece of land, 3.5 acres of land in a place called Shikopur in Gurugram in Haryana. The price at that time was 7.5 crore rupees. It is alleged in the ED's case that the mutation of the land, which takes, weeks, if not months, to get done, the mutation of that land was done within 24 hours and the land was given a commercial license. Robert Vadra's firm, Skylight Hospitality, then sold it to a major real estate developer in Haryana for 58 crores. And all of this sudden increase in value from 7 crores to 58 crores, almost 8 times, happened in a period of just 3 months. The Enforcement Directorate is investigating whether this sale violated development terms and whether it actually led to unlawful profiteering by Mr. Vadra and his company.
Misuse of the agencies.
So what is the reason that you have been?
I have no idea. I'm going to talk to them. After 5 years, they've gotten up because I speak for the minorities, because I speak for the people of the country, and because I even think of coming into politics, they misuse the agencies to try and stop me. क्या सबूत है यार? 20 साल लगेंगे सबूत लाने में. लाओ ना.
So CNN News 18's investigations editor Manoj Gupta has managed to access the entire ED prosecution complaint in the AJL case. This is the case by the ED against Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi, both of whom have been named as accused number 1 and accused number 2 respectively. The main allegation against the Gandhis is that in the year 2010, the principal officers of Associated Journals Limited, Young India and key office bearers of the All India Congress Committee orchestrated a criminal conspiracy to usurp properties worth 2,000 crores which came under the residual assets of Associated Journals Limited, which was an unlisted company at that time. The ED claims that the accused, Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi, entered into a criminal conspiracy with others. The chargesheet also confirms that to try and secure the proceeds of the crime, properties of AJL, which were valued at that time at over 750 crores, have been attached by the Enforcement Directorate. The main charge against the Gandhis is they had controlling stake of 76%, 38% for Sonia Gandhi and 38% for Rahul Gandhi. Sonia Gandhi was Congress President, Rahul Gandhi was Congress General Secretary at that time. They controlled Young India Limited, which gave a measly 50 lakh rupees to AJL as a loan, and in return, the entire assets under AJL were then transferred to Young India Limited for a mere 50 lakhs. And the entire loan of 90 crores which was lent to Associated Journals Limited, was waived off or written off by the mere payment of 50 lakh rupees by Young India Limited. So basically, the charge by the ED against the Gandhi family is that property worth up to 2,000 crore rupees, prime properties in both Delhi and Mumbai, were usurped by senior leaders of the Congress party, Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi included. There was also Motilal Vora and Oscar Fernandez. Those two control the remaining 24% stake in Young India. That the Congress party usurped properties worth thousands of crore rupees in Delhi and Mumbai belonging to Associated Journals Limited by getting into this criminal conspiracy and writing off the loans to the tune of 90 crore rupees. Let me go across to Pallavi Ghosh, and clearly this is a big sort of political hit on the Gandhis, because Sonia Gandhi has been named as accused number 1, Rahul Gandhi has been named as accused number 2. They had been questioned in the past on multiple occasions over a number of hours. Rahul Gandhi was quizzed over 5 days, Sonia Gandhi over 3 days. What is the response from the Congress party, if any, so far, as to what their legal course of action is going to be, and what they believe are the motivations of the Enforcement Directorate now that this prosecution complaint has been filed and has been taken cognizance of by the court?
Well, Zaka, as expected, the Congress party, of course, has come out very strongly in defense of the Gandhis, because that's where it hurts them the most. So whether it's been Abhishek Manu Singhvi, who's of course the lawyer in the case for the Gandhis in the National Herald case, there's been a statement which has been issued by Mr. K.C. Venugopal, who's the General Secretary in charge of the organization. And what we are being told that each of these statements have been vetted by the Gandhis themselves. We did ask Mr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi. He said, look, the charge sheet coming out and naming the Gandhis is nothing new. This is something which we were expecting, because this is the legal procedure. We don't have to challenge charge sheets, because that's not what is done. But on 25th, when there's going to be arguments in the case, they're going to come out with evidence to show that how this is a pure case of political witch hunt. From here on, it's going to be a battle, Zaka. It's on a day like today, you see the Gandhis being drawn into this entire charge sheet. We're also seeing Robert Vadra. So certainly when it comes to hitting the first family of the Congress party, you can predictably expect the entire Congress to come out in full strength. I still remember very strictly, Dhaka, that one time when both Rahul and Sonia Gandhi went to seek bail at the Patiala court, they had made a huge pomp and show. There was entire Congress workers who walked along with them. Not just that, when the Gandhis went to the ED office, the entire Congress cadre was out on the street. So I'm sure this is the kind of cadre build-up you're going to be expected if every time soon the two of them are called in for further investigation, or should the court come out with some kind of a unfavorable hearing or judgment against them at some point of time.
All right, Pallavi Ghosh, we'll leave it at that. This, of course, the Congress party says is politically motivated. But the moot point, the moot case against the Gandhi family, Mrs. Sonia Gandhi, accused number 1 in this case, and Mr. Rahul Gandhi, accused number 2 in this case, is that they entered into a criminal conspiracy, paid a mere 50 lakh rupees through a Section 25 not-for-profit company called Young India Limited, and then wrote off the debt that Associated Journals Limited owed to the Congress party and its various entities in a bid to take away the 2,000 crore worth properties that were under the Associated Journals Limited. So let's try and put this to our political guest. R.P. Singh is national spokesperson of the BJP. We're also joined by Mr. Nikul Patel, leader of the Congress party. Mr. Patel, let me start with you first. If you owed me money to the tune of, let's say, X rupees, and you have assets to the tune of 5x, and I say, okay, I'll waive off the X, but I'll take the 5x assets that you have, would that be acceptable, or would that be considered a fraud?
See, at present, what Enforcement Directorate is claiming about the assets that were worth in crores, I think if you see the things which were formed in 1938 and were owned by Jawaharlal Nehru ji, and you can see how British government also banned during the Quit India movement. I think the same thing happening right now, because Rahul Gandhi is much focusing on Gujarat, and that is what the fear now. Amit Shah ji and Narendra Modi ji might be feeling the heat. Though ED may be putting down what the numbers they want to put it on, But Rahul Gandhi ji and Sonia Gandhi ji had always followed the law, and they have went to ED whatever questions they have asked, as you rightly said, for 5 days, 3 days respectively. But still date they were not able to find any money trail or anything to it. Let them do their own job. We will be doing our own job.
No, but
I
Mr.
think
Patel,
Bharatiya
please
Janata
answer the
Party wants
question.
to
Please answer the question. How is it that a Section 25 not-for-profit company in which Mrs. Gandhi owns 38% stake, Mr. Rahul Gandhi owns another 38%, 76%, majority stake is them. The remaining 24% is also owned by two Congress members, Mr. Vora, who used to be the treasurer of the party at that time, and Mr. Oscar Fernandez, very close to the Gandhi family at that time. So 100% of this Section 25 not-for-profit company is owned by Congress members, and they take off assets belonging to a company or an entity in which not only Congress members were shareholders. In 2010, when this company finally got dissolved, there were over 1,000 shareholders. In September 2010, there were over 1,000 shareholders for Associated Journals Limited. And all of the assets of that entity were transferred to this entity which had just 4 shareholders, 2 of whom were majority shareholders, at that time the Congress President and the Congress General Secretary.
See, that again, if you have shareholders, then definitely resolutions must be made during those period of time, and each shareholders must have given the consent in the board of directors meeting or AGM that had might taken place. And then finally, it must have followed the law, of course, and definitely once the entity is approved by the board, anyone can take the decision based
Justice
on the
Kaju,
AGM.
who claims that his forefathers were part of the AJL shareholders, he said they were not consulted. There are others, former law minister and his family have come out and said that they were also shareholders of AJL. None of them were consulted when this transfer happened. But be that as it may, Mr. RP Singh, the Congress party's contention is this whole thing started when Mr. Subramaniam Swamy filed a private complaint way back in 2012-13. The Gandhis were summoned in 2015. This case has been dragging on for 10 years. You have nothing on them. If you had anything on them, they would have been in jail by now.
They are out on bail, although not in jail, but they are out on bail. And this case started when it was UPA government in ruling, not the NDA government in ruling. So, trying to play a victim card wouldn't help. Fact is, they have to give the answers. That how could with 50 lakh rupees they have become the owner of 2,000 crore rupees? Assets were 2,000 crore rupees just by 50 lakh rupees. And tell me, Jaka, which political party will give money loan to a private entity? Which political party will give a loan? Is it as per the law that you can give a loan of some 90 crore rupees and then waive it off also? I never heard about anything of this sort in Indian history or for that regard, worldwide in any political history, that some political parties given loan and then this was waived out because they wanted to oblige a family. This is very clear. And also, they have to answer the questions. And they've been asked again, and the process is on. When the questions are asked, they relent the answers. That's why it takes time. And it's a completely blue-collar crime. I mean, it's not that someone has pickpocketed my money from my pocket or your pocket. I mean, it's a very well-crafted, well-designed game plan. And as you said, none of the shareholders was on board. I mean, please, we'll appreciate if Congress party can put forward the resolution of the shareholders saying, yes, we are on board to transfer the shares to the Young India Limited.
Is there any such letter, Mr. Patel? There were 1,057 shareholders in 2010 when this acquisition happened by Young India Limited of AJL. Can you show any letters, minutes of the meeting of the board which gave its consent for this acquisition?
I think Mr. RP Singh must realize that ED must have asked number of questions during those 5 days of interrogation to Rahul Gandhi ji and 3 days of interrogation to Sonia Gandhi ji, and all those documents that must be provided to the ED, and definitely they are not still able to arrest Rahul ji and Sonia ji. That is their most major failures of the government. I think they just want to make it right now that okay, this is what the scam is, but I think they are not able to prove it. The money trail.
Anyway,
what they are
it's
talking
now
of.
it's now
And
before a
secondly,
court of law. The court of
it's
law will
only
have to
the-
take
it's only
cognizance
Rahul
of the
Gandhi is
prosecution
moving towards
complaint and decide
last
whether
10
there
years
is
they
merit to
will
frame
answer the money
charges.
trail
Anyway,
part.
I want to
The
move to the
last
second
10
story.
years they are
One
able
second,
to-
just hang on, both of you, because Mr. Robert Vadra, the son-in-law of Mrs. Sonia Gandhi, was also questioned today by the Enforcement Directorate for 5 hours. And I want to ask you, Mr. RP Singh, the allegation against Mr. Vadra, Skylight Hospitality, a company that he owned, bought 3.5 acres of land valued at 7.5 crores. This is back in 2008. A commercial license was given to this. It did not have a commercial license. The mutation was done in 24 hours. In 3 months, this 3.5 acres of land, which was valued at 7.5 crores, is sold to a major realty firm at 58 crores. Now, again, the Congress is saying, okay, if you think it was mala fide, somebody made money, Mr. Vadra made money. This happened in 2008. We're in 2025. What has stopped you for the last 10 years from taking action against Mr. Vadra? Mr. Vadra today spoke to the media and he said, अभी तो 10 साल हो गए और 20 साल लोगे सबूत लाने में.
और उसने ये भी कहा कि मैं minorities की बात करता हूँ. And talk of minorities, that's why I'm being harassed. I mean, I don't know when last time he spoke about minorities or any statement by him relating to minorities. But yes, now he's saying that I want to launch myself in politics. That's why I'm being harassed. We've been hearing this quite long that he wants to launch himself in party. In politics. But coming to the issue, Zaka, that you are missing on a point. That 7.5 crore rupees, who funded that money? That is a bigger question. The company which bought the share, which bought the land, was a company which funded the 7.5 crore rupees. And then later on, bought the same piece of land at 58 point some crore rupees. So, why did they needed to fund a private entity and then take the land from him? Obviously, because the man had a political clout. He was the dynast, and because of his dynastic leaning, he could alter the land use. And then since the land use was changed, the property price of the property shot up by almost 8 to 9 times. And that's a clear case of fraud or robbery on the public exchequer.
Mr. Patel, this is a case of fraud on the public exchequer is what Mr. RP Singh is saying. You know, first of all, that was a piece of land that was not meant for commercial purposes, gets converted into commercial land, that too within 24 hours. If you and I went to, sub-registrar's office, it would take us months on end to convert agricultural land into commercial land. But that was done in 24 hours. And the value of that land went up from 7.5 crores to 58 crores. It's an 8-time jump in just 3 months. And nobody profited.
I think, who funded that money?
Yeah.
Who funded that plot?
Mr. Patel, and who gave Mr. Vadra the 7.5 crores or Skylight Hospitality the 7.5 crores to acquire the property in the first place?
I think RP Singh sir must submit their question to Enforcement Directorate as well as Income Tax as well as CBI, because even he is having more for intelligence than those people. I think the ED had made a list of questions, and all the questions must have been asked to Rahul Gandhi ji, and he must have answered. That is why they are not able to take any action. Just talking on a national television,
Sir,
asking such things as
Robert
not
Vadra, not
going to
Rahul
make
Gandhi
your way, is not going
we
to
are
make
talking
your
about
way.
Robert
It is
Vadra,
only
not
you
Rahul
want
Gandhi.
to put
Sir,
Rahul
please.
Gandhi as well as Sonia Gandhi ji into just mingle into these things,
No,
but we
we
are
are talking
ready.
about Robert
Rahul
Vadra,
Gandhi ji
sir.
is targeting
Wake
Gujarat,
up.
and you be ready for
There's some
everything that
copy.
you are going to face in this land of Gujarat. He is there in today Gujarat for fighting you, and that is what is not digestible to you.
Okay.
If you are more smarter than
I must say that the Gujarat election is more than 2 years away, so I'm not sure about what the connection is. Gujarat election is due for December of 2027. But anyway, thank you very much to Mr. RP Singh and to Nikul Patel for joining us. I guess the news certainly seems to be tightening in public perception. In the case of the ED against Mrs. Gandhi and Mr. Rahul Gandhi, the prosecution complaint has been filed today. It will have to be presented in court, and the court will have to take cognizance of the charges. Once that happens, then the charges get framed against these two individuals. They, of course, have to be present in court when the charges are framed, and then the trial begins. And ultimately, at the end of the trial, the court will have to conclude whether they are guilty of corruption or not. I want to move on to the other big story. Just days after the implementation of the Waqf Amendment Bill, unilateral and bizarre Waqf claims continue to trickle in. The latest seems to be from Tamil Nadu, where the Waqf board has once again raised eyebrows by claiming an entire village named Kattukole This is in a place called Vellore, about 100 odd kilometers from Chennai, about 2-3 hours from Chennai. There are about 150 families in this village called Kattukole. The Waqf board there claims that the land where the villagers were staying, their houses, local temples, etc., their entire land belongs to the local dargah since 1954. Now it wants these families to pay rent to the Waqf board there for occupying this land. This after the village of Tiruchendurai, which is in Tiruchirappalli district, again in Tamil Nadu, and that's how this whole business of Waqf really came to the fore, came to the national limelight. There too, the classification of their land, which included a 1500-year-old Chola temple, was suddenly one fine morning claimed as Waqf property. So it's continuing even after the passage of the Waqf Amendment Bill. Now here's what exactly happened in this place called Kattukole in Vellore. Notices were issued by the local panchayat there, the local sub-registrar's office, to about 150 families saying that the land where their houses were, their belongings were, their schools, their small temples were, that entire land belonged to the Waqf board, and they're demanding that either they vacate that land or start paying rent to the local Waqf board and taxes to the sub-registrar office. Now, the notices were issued by F. Syed Satam, who claimed that the land had been Waqf property since 1954. He demanded that residents there enter into a formal agreement with the Waqf board and comply with Waqf laws. The villagers who've lived on that land for generations now and possess government-issued documents, pattas and other government-issued documents, they were shocked. They protested at the district collector's office. They've sought protection and clarity, arguing that they've been paying the local taxes, local property taxes, and have legal ownership papers to show that the land belongs to them. The Vellore district collector has advised residents not to pay rent to the local Waqf board, at least for now. But there's been no response from the state government, which is opposed to the Waqf amendment and claims that it is against the Muslim community.
சமீபத்தில் வக்ஃப் பில்லு பாஸ் ஆகிருக்கு. அந்த வக்ஃப் பில்லு பாஸ் ஆகிறதுனால இப்போ உடனடியாக எல்லா முஸ்லீமும் ஒன்று சேர்ந்து எங்கள் முஸ்லீமுக்கு அந்த பள்ளிவாசலுக்கு வரி கொடுக்கணும்னு சொல்கிறாங்க. இது போல் வேலூர் மாவட்டத்தில் கொணவட்டம், ஆற்காட்டில் இருக்கிற விசாரம், வேப்பூர், பல பகுதியில், இங்கே அரியூர் சொல்லக்கூடிய பகுதியில், அரியூர் தங்க கோயில் இருக்கிற பகுதியில் பல சொத்துக்கள் வக்ஃப் போர்டுன்னு சொல்லி கிளைம் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்காங்க. நம்ம கொணவட்டம் ஆஜிபுரா, இப்படி இந்த முஸ்லீம்கள் இங்கே இருக்கின்ற பெரும்பான்மை மக்களை அச்சுறுத்தி சொத்துக்களை அபகரிக்கிறது இந்த வக்ஃப் போர்டு. இந்த வக்ஃப் போர்டு பில்லை நம்ம எல்லாம் வரவேற்கணும்.
ஆனால் அங்கே வந்து 4 தலைமுறையாக தங்கின்னு இருக்கோம், வரி கட்டியிருக்காங்க, அதே போல் கரண்ட் பில் கட்டின்னு இருக்காங்க. இப்போ வந்து இது வந்து வக்ஃப் போர்டில் சேருது அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு 150 குடும்பங்களுக்கும் தனித்தனியாக அவங்க நோட்டீஸ் அனுப்பியிருக்காங்க. இது ஏன் இது வந்து வக்ஃப் போர்டில் வருது, இது எங்களுக்காக தான் நீங்கள் வரி கட்டணும், இது எங்களுடைய சொத்து அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு. ஆனால் அங்கே இருக்கிற மக்களுக்கு, இங்கே இருக்கிற இந்துக்களுக்கு என்னன்னு தெரியுதுன்னா, இது வந்து காலகாலமாக நாங்கள் வந்து அந்த வரி கட்டின்னு இருக்கிறது, அதே போல் கரண்ட் பில் கட்டுறது, இது எங்களுடைய சொத்து, இது அரசாங்கத்தோட சொத்து தான், நாங்கள் தங்கியிருக்கோம் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு நினச்சிட்டு இருந்திருக்காங்க.
Well, it's not just in Tamil Nadu. If you remember, in November of 2024, in Kerala, in neighboring Kerala, the Waqf board there had claimed over 400 acres of land in which Christian fisher folks predominantly were staying for generations in a place called Munambam in Cochin. The village of Munambam is home to about 600 families. They're mainly from the backward and scheduled caste communities, many of them Christian, some of them Hindu families as well. This has a long history in Munambam. In 1902, the then King of Travancore had leased these 400 acres of land and 60 acres of water known as the Munambam property to a Kutchi Memon. Years later, the son of this Kutchi Memon, who was a trader, in fact the son-in-law, registered this land, including the areas where the fishermen had resided for nearly a century. This registered land was then handed over to the management of the Farooq College in Kozhikode district in 1950 as a gift deed. It was registered with a clause that the management of the Farooq College should not use this land for any purpose other than educational objectives. The word Waqf was written into that document, the gift deed that passed on the property from the Kutchi Memon family to the management of the Farooq College. Now, this 6-decade-old land dispute started in 1962 when the residents there, the next generation of the fisher folks who were living in Munambam, contested the Farooq College's ownership of their land. The legal fight ultimately reached the Kerala High Court, which in 1975 upheld the Farooq College's claims. A settlement then happened between the Farooq College and a number of residents who were staying there in Munambam. A number of these residents were allowed to buy the land that they lived on And in a period between 1983 and 1993, the Farooq College management obtained about 33 lakh rupees from these individual sales. Then in 2009, under the then CPM government, there was a retired judge panel under Judge Nisar that was constituted, and they submitted a report that the Munambam land was Waqf property. Then in 2019, the Kerala Waqf Board formally registered the property as Waqf, asserting its claim over Munambam, Cherai and Pallikal islands, all of which are in the Ernakulam district. In 2022, the residents there were told that they could not pay property tax on their properties. Following this, the state government intervened and allowed them to pay the tax, but no formal order was issued by the government. And then cut to 2024, the last year, the residents there were forced to vacate the land that they had legally purchased, and they were staying on for at least 3 to 4 generations prior to this controversy blowing up. Meanwhile, Union Minority Affairs Minister Mr. Kiran Rijiju, who was the architect of the bill that was passed, the Waqf Amendment Bill, in Parliament a few days ago, he was today in Munambam. He took stock of this land grab claims. He made the centre's stand amply clear, saying that nothing like once a Waqf, always a Waqf, as many within the opposition are claiming so.
This is not related to or targeted to Muslim alone. There are some campaign going on to set a narrative that the central government is working against Muslim community. No. Remember, once a Waqf means always a Waqf. If we don't change the law, any property declared as a Waqf property cannot be reversed. Waqf by user is a very dangerous provision. It doesn't require any document. Recourse which is available to the innocent farmers, the fishermen, is to approach to the Honorable Supreme Court.
So I want to go across to Mr. Ramaswamy Mayappan, who's a lawyer at the Madras High Court. Mr. Mayappan, the most controversial provision was this Waqf by user, which the new amendment bill has curtailed or has quashed down. How then can these people in Tamil Nadu, about 150 families in a village in Vellore, how is their land being claimed by the local Waqf board?
Very good evening to your viewers, Saka. So primarily here, all these actions commenced prior to the amendment bill coming into place and the act being approved by the president. So we have to look at the genesis from the act originally from 1995 and then the 2013 amendments coming into play. 1. 2 is, now given that those actions have already commenced, do these people have any relief? Before going into the legal aspects, Zaka, there is one thing that we need to look at. When it is associated with land, I mean these small landowners, especially farmers, it's a very emotive issue. Land is connected with their hereditary, connected with their parents, with their grandparents and their ancestry. And it is also connected with their livelihood. Their ability to earn their bread, their roti, kapda, makan is all from this source of land. So while that be the case, they are starved of their right to actually seek for their remedies against their own property, which they've held for generations together. And now it's always a surprise when someone all of a sudden after 50 years, 100 years or 200 years of ownership comes and questions that you do not own these land. And the constraint on 2 issues, one is the section 40, another one is the work by user. Both become an issue because these original owners do not have any idea of how these claims are made. And now the advantage with the amendment coming into play, the dilution of section 40 and the dilution of work by user provides for an option to go before the council and make their own case. And now the revenue record will be verified by independent parties. The advantage that they did not have earlier is now available is the revenue records will be verified on the basis of what the Waqf tribunal and the Waqf board calls for. But today, the revenue record will be available with the collector, will be available with a revenue agency of the respective state. So therefore, these people have a right over the entire property, which they'll be able to agitate before the tribunal, before the board, and again before the courts. They don't always have to go only to civil court.
But tell me, Mr. Mayappan, you know, the thing that many of these people in Vellore, the ones in Munambam are also asking is, they have property papers to prove that this land belonged to them over a period of generations. They have government records, they have property tax papers, electricity bills, water bills, etc. that they have paid. If this land was not theirs, then what business did the government have, charging water tax and electricity tax and electricity charges and property tax from these people? Aren't these government records to show that these are the rightful owners of this land?
Absolutely, Zakar. That's the reason when you look at the Minority Affairs Minister, Honorable Kiran Rijiju speaking, he talks about how the LDF and UDF government failed, and similarly how the DMK government has failed in Tamil Nadu. Because the revenue record is with the government. The government collects taxes, government collects utility bills. These records are maintained by them. If the revenue record reflects anything otherwise, the government should have put them on notice. That's one issue. And incidentally, even the fact that you brought to light, where Farooq College sold lands to independent purchasers.
Yes.
They're all bona fide purchasers. When they look at the revenue record and Farooq College claims title over the property, and a third party, after completing their due diligence, acquires the property, and the sub-registrar there registers the entire document, and the necessary revenue record is issued, and property taxes are paid, the people are in complete belief. The requirement under the Transfer of Property Act is for any individual to do their due diligence. Section 56, I will have to check if there is any list pendants. When I have done both these checks, I have ascertained if the property is good to buy or not. When there's bona fide title, I acquire the title. Now today, who is to question? First is the government authority. So today the government are playing with the sentiments of these common people, with their life savings, with their bread and butter. So the problem is the government authority. The government needs to have a clear mechanism on how to check through revenue records. The problem with the Waqf Act that existed until this past week is that they could always notify under Section 40 any revenue record newly modified saying those are Waqf properties. But today the advantage that these people have is they can question them. One, there can't be a unilateral declaration by the Waqf board as to some property is Waqf property without going through the civil proceedings demonstrating by evidence that this property belongs to them. So any donation that took place, they will have to demonstrate the donation was fair, proper and correct, if the procedure adopted was right or not. One. Two is if there was pre-existing title. For example, let us assume for a moment even the Farooq College land donation was proper. But I should not have donated the land around it. That title should have been verified by the Waqf board originally. That obligation was not on the Waqf board. Today that obligation is there on the Waqf board by virtue of the amendments that are brought in and the amendment that is in place.
All right, Mr. Ramaswamy Meyyappan, we'll leave it at that. We'll see whether there is any kind of relief for these farmers in Vellore district, where now the Waqf has claimed lands belonging to about 150 farmers, saying that it is Waqf land and that they need to start paying rent to the local Waqf board. Let's move on to the other big story. An eerie calm has prevailed in Bhangar as well as in Murshidabad on the occasion of Bengali New Year today. But it still reminds many of the violent clashes that broke out over the weekend as protests against the Waqf Act turned ugly. The Ministry of Home Affairs has raised concerns over the recent violence in the 3 border areas of West Bengal. The preliminary investigation into the violence indicates the involvement of Bangladeshi miscreants. The Union Home Ministry earlier held a video conference with West Bengal Chief Secretary and the West Bengal DGP to assess the situation and to review law and order. But politics continues on the sidelines.
आप देख रहे होंगे बंगाल जल रहा है, वहां की मुख्यमंत्री चुप है, दंगाइयों को शांति दूत कहती है। अरे लातों के भूत बातों से कहां मानने वाले हैं? सेकुलरिज्म के नाम पर इन लोगों ने दंगाइयों को दंगा करने की पूरी छूट दे रखी है। पूरा मुर्शिदाबाद पिछले 1 सप्ताह से चल रहा है। इस प्रकार की अराजकता पे लगाम लगनी चाहिए। कांग्रेस मौन है, समाजवादी पार्टी मौन है, टीएमसी मौन है। वे धमकी पे धमकी दिए जा रहे हैं, समर्थन कर रहे हैं। बांग्लादेश के अंदर जो हुआ था उसका समर्थन कर रहे हैं बड़ी बेशर्मी के साथ। अगर उन्हें बांग्लादेश अच्छा लगता है तो उनको बांग्लादेश ही जाना चाहिए, क्यों भारत की धरती पर बोझा बने हुए हो।
But is there a bigger problem on our hands? An intel note accessed by CNN News 18 shows a substantial demographic shift in West Bengal, and that raises concerns about potential imbalances, migration issues, local crimes that have increased. Now, following the 2021 election, which Mamata Banerjee won by a landslide, violence and attacks happened on Hindu properties linked to local BJP workers. Particularly, the 2 epicenters happened to be Murshidabad and Malda districts, and that drove many families to leave from those areas. Now, in Muslim-majority regions, Hindu-owned businesses are allegedly experiencing boycotts, leading to asset sales at below-market rates. The Muslim population growth is concentrated in these border districts. Basically, there are 4 districts, Murshidabad, Malda, Nadia and South 24 Parganas, and that is reshaping the local power structures, which is contributing to tensions between Hindus and Muslims. Intelligence officials say that illegal immigration from Bangladesh, including Rohingya refugees, has significantly altered the demographics of these border districts. The ruling TMC has been accused of vote bank politics, with allegations that the settlement of migrants is being facilitated in exchange for electoral support.
There are some very alarming intel reports coming in about the violence which has broken out in Murshidabad over the last couple of days. In fact, according to intel sources, it is very similar to the attack on the Hindu minorities in Bangladesh. As we all have been reporting, a large number of them have either left Murshidabad or plan to do so. They've taken refuge in schools and in other relief camps as well in Malda. And that is the kind of attacks which are coming in on many of the Hindus in Murshidabad. But there is also an economics behind it. According to intelligence sources, which has been revealed to CNN News 18 through Manoj Gupta, it talks about the fact that economically is solely intrusion by Muslim vendors, whether it comes to mangoes, which are the mainstay of that area, whether it comes to vegetables, all of that has now been occupied. That space, economically speaking, has been now occupied by the Muslim vendors. There's also a large influx into madrasas. A large number of young, impressionable young boys and girls are being indoctrinated, and this is raising alarm bells. But more than that, the concern is that there must be money which is also apparently coming in from overseas. Gulf countries are considered to be one of those culprits over here. There's a lot of worry which is being expressed over the fact that the Jamaat-e Mujahideen from Bangladesh is actually behind these kind of violence which is breaking out in Murshidabad, and is also affecting the secular as well as the peaceful fabric in this beautiful city and town of West Bengal.
So as the world goes around in circles over President Donald Trump's tariffs, India seems to be well on its path to at least blunt or negate these, or at least some of the heat emanating from the tariffs. Both India and the United States are looking to conclude negotiations for the first tranche of what is the proposed bilateral trade agreement. They want to try and finish this before the agreed timeline of the fall of 2025, when President Trump is expected to be here in Delhi for the Quad Summit. The Commerce Ministry has confirmed that the terms of reference, or the TOR, for the first part of a bilateral trade deal between India and the US have been agreed to in principle and have been signed by both India and the US. The two countries are discussing the contours of a bilateral trade agreement, which is part of a new goal that was announced when Prime Minister Modi was in the White House back in February, Mission 500, which is the aim to double bilateral trade between India and the US to $500 billion by the end of the decade.
India and the US have signed the terms of reference for a potential bilateral trade agreement between both the countries, which both the countries intend to finalize by September or October of 2025. Also, the Commerce Ministry has yet not clarified on whether there would be a further pause on the current 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs from the United States, since both the countries are already in discussions for a bilateral trade agreement, in which virtual discussions are slated to start later this week, and in-person physical discussions will continue from the second half of May 2025, in which Indian officials are likely to travel for further talks to the United States. Also, India and the US are looking to reduce tariff as well as non-tariff barriers as far as trade between both the countries is concerned, and India is seeking to go for trade liberalization with the United States with removal of any such barriers. Apart from that, India has also set up an import monitoring cell which comprises of officials from the Department of Commerce, the DGFT, the DPIIT and the CBIC. Now this cell is going to keep a close eye
US President Donald Trump signaled over the weekend that he would pursue new tariffs on powerful computer chips that are used inside smartphones and laptops. This was a U-turn from just a couple of days ago, when the Trump administration had excluded a variety of electronics from the steep import taxes that he had put on China. The push came as President Trump's top economic advisors have been scrambling to explain their shifting strategy. For weeks now, Trump's advisors insisted that they would shield no company or any industry from any of the tariffs that have been levied. All of this in a bid to reset America's trade relationships, particularly the one with China. The reprieve, though, for technology companies like Apple came in the form of a Customs and Border Protection rule that was issued late Friday night, which spared high-tech imports from reciprocal tariffs. While the US president paused a set of reciprocal tariffs on nearly 60 countries last week, his administration forged ahead with a new 145% tax on Chinese exports. The announcement last week came after Beijing retaliated against the United States. Beijing imposed a steep 125% retaliatory tariff on American imports, which sparked off Trump to announce tariffs as high as 145% on China. But in this game of who blinks first, Trump seems to be the one who has blinked first. The exclusions covered a wide slate of products like computers, smartphones, modems, flash drives. It was a big victory for companies like Apple, as well as other US tech giants who rely on Chinese factories for importing their devices. Apple executives had even been in touch with Trump administration officials about lowering the Chinese tariffs. Trump cast the exemptions in a slightly different light. He framed it as a temporary break while his government prepares more targeted import taxes. The Trump administration is expected to take the first step towards enacting these new tariffs as soon as this week, opening an investigation to determine the effects of semiconductor imports on national security. Trump is expected to use Clause 232 of the US Tariff Act to target semiconductor chips as part of America's broader national security framework. This approach mirrors the process that yielded Trump's tariffs on other specific products earlier this year. He had imposed high fees on foreign cars and foreign auto parts. Taking to social media, the US president signaled that the scope of his next inquiry would be on semiconductors. He would look at the entire electronics supply chain in what he called the upcoming national security tariff investigations.
The tariffs will be in place in the not distant future because, as you know, like we did with steel, like we did with automobiles, like we did with aluminum, which are now fully on, we'll be doing that with semiconductors, with chips, and numerous other things. And that'll take place in the very near future.
But China is not sitting back silently either. China has suspended exports of a wide range of critical minerals, also known as rare earths. They've also threatened to choke off supplies to important automakers, aerospace manufacturers, semiconductor companies, and military contractors. Shipments of these rare earths, which are essential for assembling everything from cars to drones to robots to missiles, they've been halted across many Chinese ports. The Chinese government says it's in the process of drafting a new regulatory system. Once that is in place, the new system could then permanently end supplies of these rare earths from reaching certain American companies. The official crackdown is part of China's retaliation for President Trump's sharp increase in reciprocal tariffs that started on the 2nd of April. 90% of the world's rare earths are produced in China. Howard Lutnick, the US Commerce Secretary, said that Trump could announce these new tariffs on semiconductors in the next week or two. This would target not just semiconductors, but also pharmaceutical imports. That's another key priority for the Trump administration. Kevin Hassett, who is the director of White House National Economic Council, told CNN's State of the Union that it was always the case that some of these high-tech imports, like semiconductors, would be subject to their own tariffs, that is very much aside of the reciprocal tariffs.
The 232 things were always excluded. They weren't covered by the new actions that you discussed at the opening. And so it's not like, so for example, semiconductors are the key important part of a lot of defense equipment, and there's going to be a semiconductor 232 that studies those things carefully and decides what has to be onshored in order to protect America. And so it was always the case in Annex 2 in the Reciprocal Act that semiconductors were going to not be covered by that action because there's a 232 action that was announced in the executive order.
The Trump administration has already excluded various types of semiconductors from the reciprocal tariffs, but the chaotic back and forth, the tariffs and then exemptions to the tariffs, this has completely bewildered businesses, many of whom depend on China for their trade. Some investors publicly praised the decision to walk back on the tariffs on electronics. In fact, electronics represent about a quarter of all of America's imports from China. The so-called heavy rare earth metals covered by the export suspension are used in magnets, which are essential for making many kinds of electric motors. These metals also go into chemicals that manufacture jet engines, lasers, car headlights, engine spark plugs. These rare metals are vital in making capacitors, which are key electrical components that go into the making of computer chips. Those computer chips are required for powering artificial intelligence and also powering your smartphone. One thing is clear, there appears to be no quick end to the trade conflict between the United States and China. And the potential for new tariffs on semiconductor chips is threatening to cast a pall on the major tech industry. There's been massive lobbying by groups that claim to represent Apple, Intel, Nvidia, as well as other US tech giants, have encouraged the Trump administration to strike trade deals with China. Ultimately, new taxes on semiconductor chip imports would make it expensive for American companies to produce smartphones, and that would cut into their profits or force them to raise prices for American consumers. An average iPhone, which costs around $1,000, could now go upwards of $1,500, which ultimately will pinch American wallets. American tech companies are hoping that Trump would finally pay heed to the American consumer. Two Russian ballistic missiles slammed into a bustling city center in northeastern Ukraine on Sunday morning. Ukrainian officials say it's killed at least 34 people in what appeared to be the deadliest attack against civilians this year. The morning strike on the city of Sumy was the latest in a string of intensifying Russian attacks on urban centers in Ukraine. There's been a step up of major attacks that have inflicted heavy civilian casualties despite the Trump administration pushing for a ceasefire. Officials said that the city center was crowded with civilians who were out enjoying Palm Sunday, which is a traditional Christian celebration very popular in Ukraine. Lively streets were turned into scenes of carnage. Videos of the aftermath showed mangled and bloodied bodies lying on the ground. There were burning cars and debris covering the road, even as screams and sirens wailed in the air. 2 children were among the dead and more than 100 people were wounded, according to Ukraine's emergency services. The Russian strikes came just over a week after another Russian missile had hit a playground in the central city of Kryvyi Rih, killing at least 19 people, and that included 9 children. In that attack, as well as in the one in Sumy, Russia used ballistic missiles which travel at very high speeds, making them extremely difficult to shoot down. Overall, civilian deaths in Ukraine have increased since the US-mediated ceasefire talks began in March. The United Nations said last week that more than 160 civilians were killed in Ukraine in the past month. That's a 50% increase from February and 70% more than the same period last year. President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, who has accused Russia of using the ceasefire to stall for time, said the attack on Sumy showed that Moscow really has no interest in a ceasefire, despite the Trump administration and its efforts to try and broker a peace.
Війни закінчуються, коли про злочини війни не забувають. І коли на агресора тиснуть достатньо, саме цього зараз немає. Цієї п'ятниці був рівно місяць, як Росія відкинула американську пропозицію повного і безумовного припинення вогню. Вони не бояться, і саме тому балістика. Саме тому щоночі під сотню ударних дронів, більшість з яких шахеди.
Both Russia and Ukraine have pledged to halt attacks on each other's energy infrastructure. They're also trying to cut a Black Sea deal, but none of this has come into effect just yet. Russia, meanwhile, has rejected a full unconditional 30-day ceasefire, which Ukraine had accepted at the behest of Donald Trump. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha has said that Russia has escalated attacks on civilian areas since the ceasefire talks began last month in Saudi Arabia. Ukraine's European allies have echoed similar sentiments, saying that this appears to be a coordinated response by Russia to try and derail the ceasefire talks. President Emmanuel Macron of France said on social media, and I quote, "Everyone knows that this war was initiated by Russia alone, and today it is clear that Russia alone chooses to continue with it with blatant disregard for human lives, international law, and the diplomatic efforts of President Trump." There was no immediate comment from Russia's military about the attack on Sumy, which is located just 20 miles from the Russian border. Before the war began, Sumy was home to about 250,000 people. Since the war, it has become a refuge for Ukrainian civilians who are fleeing villages and towns along the Russian border in a bid to escape the bombardment. Sumy and its surrounding regions have also regularly come under Russian attack over the past year, particularly since Ukraine used the area as a base for a cross-border offensive into Russia's neighboring region of Kursk. Moscow's forces pushed most Ukrainian troops out of Kursk earlier this year, but Kiev has warned that Russia is now preparing to push into the Sumy region and thereby open a new front in this war. So what's the game plan here? It's not immediately clear why Vladimir Putin is not agreeing to the America-brokered ceasefire with Ukraine, even at the cost of angering Trump. Here are some possible explanations. Putin aims to seize as much Ukrainian territory as possible to strengthen Russia's negotiating position. Control over regions like Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson, which are partially occupied since 2022, is seen as critical for the future of peace talks. By expanding Russia's territorial holdings, Putin is seeking to force Ukraine into accepting facts on the ground and thereby legitimizing Russia's claims. Putin's long-term goal, though, is not just control of these 4 provinces. He wants to extinguish the idea of Ukrainian nationhood. He views Ukraine as historically a part of Russia. A ceasefire, a temporary one, would allow Ukraine to regroup, rearm, and fortify its defenses, something that is incompatible with Putin's objective, which is to subjugate Kiev. Demands for Ukraine's demilitarization, its complete exclusion from NATO, are non-negotiable for Putin to even agree to come to the negotiating table. Russia's recent gains in the Kursk region are viewed as a strategic victory. Putin believes expelling Ukrainian forces from Kursk would deprive Kiev of a key bargaining chip. It also allows Moscow to demand permanent annexation of the occupied territories in exchange for a ceasefire.
When you start a war, you got to know that you can win the war, right? You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size and then hope that people give you some missiles.
Not just that, Ukrainian air defense interception rates have dropped to 50%, partly because of Russia's shift to larger, more sophisticated missiles. By overwhelming Ukraine's defenses, Putin hopes to cripple it on the battlefield. A 30-day ceasefire, as proposed by America, would grant Ukraine time to regroup. Putin has explicitly rejected this. He fears that a ceasefire, a temporary one, would enable Kiev to fortify the front lines and plan a counteroffensive. While Trump, on the other hand, seeks a swift resolution, he wants an immediate ceasefire, Putin is exploiting this urgency by prolonging negotiations and by attaching maximalist conditions. By feigning a limited interest in peace, Putin avoids directly antagonizing Trump, while at the same time advancing his goal, which is to crush Ukrainian nationhood. Putin likely calculates that Trump has a transactional approach, he also has very limited attention span, and his skepticism of NATO will shield Russia from any further repercussions. Putin's strategy hinges on outlasting Donald Trump's resolve and Western unity, at the same time eroding Ukraine's capacity to fight. And right now, it is Putin who seems to be succeeding.
मैंने मेरे सीईओ को बुलाया।
President Trump has doubled down on his declared intention to impose tariffs now on pharmaceutical imports into the US, and that could affect India heavily. India exported about $12 billion worth of pharma products to the US last year, and that's up from just about a couple of $1 billion a year worth only 10 years earlier. So this is an export that's been rising quite dramatically. About a third of all India's pharma exports now go to the US. So any break in that or any inhibition of that would certainly affect India's pharmaceutical companies, but also they would hit patients here in America.
Pharmaceuticals from India and also from China are particularly important in forming in the generic drug market. You know, that's where you have a lot of market drugs that people use routinely. Antibiotics are the most common one, but there are all sorts of common drugs that are used for cardiovascular diseases, for diabetes, etc., that are generic drugs. Prices for generic drugs will particularly increase, and that'll cause some problems both within the U.S. for people who take those medications, as well as for the countries that are exporting the pharmaceuticals.
Trump wants all these medicines now to be produced in the US and sees tariffs as the way to bring in production.
We don't make our own drugs, our own pharmaceuticals. We don't make our own drugs anymore. The drug companies are in Ireland and they're in lots of other places, China. And all I have to do is impose a tariff. The more, the faster they move in. The higher the tariff, is very simple. It's inversely proportional. The higher the tariff, the faster they come.
But not so fast. Not so fast, certainly, as Trump seems to expect, and not so easy as Trump seems to think.
It's tough because there are high production standards that we want to have for these drugs. They are, depending on the drug, can be very complicated to manufacture, and then depend on particular supplies of certain sorts of inputs. You know, so for example, insulin products, in many cases, what they really require is that you have the inputs. The inputs tend to come from things like pig's intestines. So if you don't have a ready supply of pig's intestines, it's hard to make enough insulin.
It's not just about production standards and available inputs. It's about the economics of production.
There are reasons why many goods are produced in India or China. The cost of production is inherently lower. Labor costs are lower. In many cases, the supply of ingredients that go into these medications are already there. To bring them into the U.S., you may be able to do it, but inherently will be higher cost.
Given the price to be paid both by patients and producers, neither is likely to agree with the writing up on the wall at this pharmaceutical store. President Trump has doubled down on his declared intention to impose tariffs now on pharmaceutical imports into the US, and that could affect India heavily. India exported about $12 billion worth of pharma products to the US last year, and that's up from just about a couple of $1 billion a year worth only 10 years earlier. So this is an export that's been rising quite dramatically. About a third of all India's pharma exports now go to the US. So any break in that or any inhibition of that would certainly affect India's pharmaceutical companies, but also they would hit patients here in America.
Pharmaceuticals from India and also from China are particularly important in forming in the generic drug market. You know, that's where you have a lot of market drugs that people use routinely. Antibiotics are the most common one, but there are all sorts of common drugs that are used for cardiovascular disease.
Viewers, it's been a day of significant, fast-moving developments, shockwaves, absolute shockwaves rippling through the political establishment and the Congress ecosystem today, as first the Enforcement Directorate summoned Robert Vadra, and a few hours later, viewers, as it was questioning him, it decided to file its first ever charge sheet in the National Herald case, alleging money laundering. The charge sheet names Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi as accused number 1 and 2. The Gandhis are out on bail in the same case since 2015. You will remember those scenes, and they're in the middle of your screens, viewers, from Patiala House Court. What a climb down it was. What a come down it was for the Gandhis, who had been in power for 10 years and they had to be summoned to the Patiala House courts, and then they were released on bail. And the Enforcement Directorate will be hoping to make a strong enough impression now on the judge to send the duo to jail. The charge sheet against the Gandhis is substantial, viewers. And on the face of it, many legal luminaries, including Dr. Subramaniam Swamy, who was the person who actually got the ball rolling in this entire matter by filing a case against the Gandhis, says that the charges are watertight. This is an open and shut case. What is it really, this case? Let me quickly run you through it, viewers, because this is going to become a massive talking point over the next few days, weeks, months. The acquisition of AJL, Associated Journals Limited,